but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord. Uja was curious why I left that part in there. I left that part in there really, it wasn't in the lectionary, but I left it in there because I think I love that phrase, because sometimes we want to get people back, but there's a Taylor Swift song where she talks about, karma is my friend, karma is a warm thought. I bet for you it's not. And I think about that a lot, about is the concept of comeuppance a comfortable thought for me or not? Do I think that I've shown up consistently the way that I want to? And if other people are however they are, am I comforted by the concept of karma or not? Is an interesting kind of, I don't know, I like T Swift, she's awesome. Anyway, I want to show you guys a posture that has been spiritually important for me when I want to think about relationships. It looks like this. I don't know if I've taught you guys this posture before. So this is how I think about relationships, right? That there's a sense of giving and connection out here with other people up to a point, and that point is my relationship here. So this is my generosity, and this is my boundaries, right? Sometimes when I'm doing pastoral counseling, I'll talk to people about this because oftentimes one of these two is stronger than the other one, right? I've known a lot of people who didn't have a lot of this one. They had a lot of this one, right? And that's often how people read that part about being a living sacrifice. Often the language of sacrifice in the Christian church is a language of self-denial, self-deprecation, right? Making yourself less than others. I mean, it even talks about don't be arrogant, but associate with the lowly. And that can be interpreted in this way of you're nothing, you are dirt, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Like, we can interpret these Christian symbols that way. But that's not his point. That's not Paul's point. His point is that our relationship to others needs to be nuanced by our relationship to God. Our relationship to others needs to be nuanced by our relationship to God. That when he talks about a living sacrifice, the point is living sacrifice. See, we're not familiar with sacrificing animals. That's not part of our cultural milieu, right? But it was at that time. There was a lot of taking an animal and killing it and giving it as a gift to God to deal with problems, right? To resolve issues. But a living sacrifice is about how do we use our whole body, our whole life, and commit it to God. The question there, of course, is, well, what does that mean? We have the responsibility to discern, as Paul says in this text, what is the will of God, right? And he uses three words. What is good and acceptable, and it says perfect, but it's really complete. And acceptable means goodly appointed, right? Like what is pleasing. And good, the Greek is just like a core word meaning good. So this idea of what is acceptable, what is pleasing, what is complete, and not just for us, but for all of us. And sometimes we can get distracted because we're doing that, all of us, and so now I have to manage all of you, and all of you have to be okay with the sermon and the length of this worship service, and da-da-da-da-da, and get very anxious about that. Because any one of you checks your watch, and then all of a sudden, I'm very literally felt my cortisol shoot up when you did that, but it's okay, right? Because that's mine, right? And what's my job? My job is to be in relationship with God and show up to all of you in my relationship with God, right? It is our work, if we're going to be in relationship with other people, to be grounded in our understanding of God. That we're not supposed to be sacrificial to and for other people, necessarily. We're supposed to be sacrificial to and for what God is all about. And to me, that is love and freedom. Those are my two big words. If I want to talk about what I think God and Jesus are all about, it's love and freedom. So how am I acting in relationship to advance the goals of more love and more freedom, more liberation, and more joy. Those things are very central to me. And a grounded spirituality is a spirituality that is constantly discerning what is the will of God and orienting to it, like the balance board, right? I can focus on any one particular thing, and I'm going to eventually get out of balance. But if I'm focused on what is the center for me, I can often hold a lot more things than I thought I could. Not that holding things is really the thing you should be aiming for. The thing you should be aiming for is the balance. Sometimes people put stuff on your plate that you don't really want there, and part of having balance is figuring out how to get it off your plate, hopefully without destroying it. But our relationship with others needs to be nuanced by our relationship with God. Now, Daisy, I heard you a minute ago talk about the difference between the big city not feeling very hospitable and welcoming and these kind of smaller spaces, these small towns or church or certain friend groups. Guys, this is what Jesus is actually all about. If we're going to be followers of Christ, we have to be radically nonconformist, right? What does Paul say right here? He says, "Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God." I was reading these commentaries, and they were all reminding us that if we really want to be followers of Jesus, part of our job, our role, is to challenge the norms of our society, especially the norms of our society that invite us to be separate, that invite us to be judgmental and condemnatory, the ones that invite us to take vengeance into our own hands, that invite us to be certain of our righteousness and our goodness, to say, I'm balanced now, and this is right and good, instead of to recognize that we're constantly in this negotiation, constantly in this seeking alignment with God, right? Empire is interested in you being very certain, mostly that you're not enough. Empire is interested in you being very certain that you're not doing enough, that you're not enough, because then it can manipulate you. Empire is only interested in you feeling feelings of inadequacy, not actually feeling your feelings. It's one of the reasons we haven't been trained to do this very well, because it's radically countercultural to just feel a feeling. In my family of origin, you only shared that you were feeling a feeling if you wanted somebody else to behave differently. And so you were really thoughtful about whether you shared a feeling, because there was not space for you to just have a feeling. Now, if my parents were here, they'd probably feel very bad that I said this, because it would feel like an indictment on them, but it's not about them, because they were enculturated into a society that didn't know how to allow us to feel our feelings. How many of you were enculturated into a family system that didn't really have space for you to feel your feelings? Yeah. All of us have off-limits feelings. We talked about this last week. All of us have a feeling, or many, on a list that are not okay to feel, right? If you feel them, something's wrong. If you feel them, you're bad. If you feel them, you're a problem. You're making waves. You're rocking the boat. Well, guys, the boat is on water, right? It's rocking already, right? But feeling our feelings can be part of that dropping down and that getting centered if we can allow them to be felt. They are tools for self-discovery, but empire just sees them as tools for manipulation. And we've learned this, so we have to unlearn it. And I think we unlearn it in our relationship with God, and then we practice it in our relationship with others. We receive it and then utilize it. That's what it is. The relationship with others really requires us to be able to feel our own feelings, right? Are we in touch with our own feelings? If you think about where you're at here, also think about where are you at in your ability to share how you really feel in your relationships and in the breadth of your relationships. Sometimes we're really terrified of sharing how we really feel because we're terrified of oversharing because we've encountered other people who weren't very thoughtful about how they shared their feelings, and it was kind of like, oh God, right? But I think a lot of that is, a lot of those folks are processing it in the moment that they're sharing gift to other people is to process our emotions first, as you guys talked about. Maybe you need to write them down, maybe you need to think it through, and then decide, is this what I need to share? Is this theirs, or is this mine? Is my anger still doing work for me? Is it still protecting me, or has it just become resentment and it's in my way and I need to let it go? Paul tells us in this text, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. To me, that's all about, are we able to show up without our resentments? But then he goes on to say, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. And that is so much work, to just show up and be present with people and their emotions and not take responsibility for them. I mean, we are all growing in our capacity and our ability to just meet people where they are. At least I hope we are. I'm trying to grow in that. And allow, you know what, if that's your feeling, that's yours. I was talking with a woman the other day, in her 50s, mom's in her 80s, has had this complicated perfectionist relationship forever in her life, right? And she finally got to this point where she was like, you know what? I am never going to be a good enough daughter. She switched. At first she said, I am always going to disappoint my mom. And then she said, my mom is always going to be disappointed. And it was like, oh yeah. My mom's going to be disappointed, and that's hers. Am I going to show up with integrity to my relationship with my mom? Is karma a warm thought? Bring T-Swift back. Because part of our emotional maturity, part of our spiritual maturity is saying, you know, you are experiencing the world separate from me. And I'm showing up to this relationship, and you're going to have a feeling. And if I'm a person who's grounded in my integrity, then that's how I need and want to show up, and I'll meet you. I'll weep with you as you weep. I'll rejoice with you as you rejoice. And that's your feeling. And this is where I am. That our relationship with others has to be grounded in our relationship with God. It has to be boundaried. We can't just live our lives as if our goal is to sacrifice for others. Because ultimately, somebody else's rabbit hole of fears and anxieties and concerns will drag us down. And we won't be a gift to others. The self-compassion is actually a gift to everyone in your life. When you can just have a feeling and sit with it and allow it, because that means that you're growing in your capacity to accept and sit with and allow everyone else's feelings. And then maybe they can feel their feelings instead of moving into the narrative, the trap of what it means about them to feel a feeling. Maybe they can just feel it. Your self-compassion is a gift to everyone in your life because it is you